Welcome, everyone. This is Elizabeth Wood, and I get to speak to Tantra Maat today. And we're on this beautiful New Earth Conversation series, and Tantra has come to generously give us a taste of her beautiful field and her wonderful heart. She's an incredibly advanced mystic, psychic seer, and meta-linguist. And today we're going to be really delving deep into the capacities for paradise, among other topics. So thank you so much, Tantra, for joining me. I'm really excited to talk with you and orbit together.
Perfect.
Very good. So let's jump right in. We were just touching on this wonderful journey that humanity's got, and we're in the midst of it. This outcome that we're looking for is the reclaiming of our natural capacities to understand, to feel, to tap into paradise. And I love what you had just said. You said that people wouldn't be searching for paradise if it didn't exist. And I just love that. That's so important. Tell me a little bit about what do you see humanity in this moment? They're still reaching for paradise. They want it. All human beings are desiring it more than ever, I think. It's this peak point, a big choice point around this paradise piece. Where do you see humanity is at the moment? And what would you like to share about this journey so far?
You know, a long time ago, Elizabeth, people told me I needed to dumb down because human beings were not very intelligent. I think I said screw off to whoever said that to me. So I trust our audience. And I'd like to start where I live in the realm of consciousness that I've been operating in a few millennia. And then people can gather whatever serves them rather than me trying to figure out how people want to understand what I have to say. So my memory when I was born didn't close down. So when I was young, I had a longer memory of existence than other people did. So what happens when a human being's born? Well, let me start here. We can't go out our door and not think this place is paradise. It's impossible. You know, we can think it got trashed, or we can think that we're not paradise, human beings aren't. But you can't walk out in nature and ignore the fact that something incredible has been created here. That's impossible. And I'm probably speaking for a lot of people, but I'll speak for myself because I also think the power of now is the telling of the story. I don't think we can figure out what's going on right now, but we can tell the stories we're present to, and it will build back something that we've all been searching for a long time. I coined the word paradise simply actually because of a song that was sung in Footloose that says almost paradise, but I instead go, always paradise, waiting at heaven's door, always paradise, how could we ask for more? And that solves it for me. That just solves it. So it all started with coining that word resonantly when I came into 2020. You know, at 1 minute after midnight in California, I woke up, I was awake and I went, oh my goodness, what just happened? And it was if the past had fallen away and something was at our door. Not something at our door like a physical thing that like everybody for thousands of years have searched for paradise here. But they searched for nirvana, the place of nirvana, the place of Bali High, the place of heaven. But we didn't realize it was us, that we were created from these generating, organizing designs of creation. We have lots of ways to talk about it. Most of it is broken down so much that you can't even get the taste of it. But, you know, the new age was I am God. But I don't like to use that word because it's colored by perceived realities. But we can think that there are generating, organizing designs of creation here, and that we're part of them. So our longing, our craving for a wonderful life, for some of us fairness, for some of us equality, that's all paradise. You can't deny that that's how paradise would exist. You know, that's how it works. So the difference between 2019, and just as a sidebar, one of the odd things in my existence is that over 45 years ago, I knew about now. And all my work, everything I ever did, was a little bit like the primordial mother preparing the soil for this time. And so now we're here. I imagine I'm talking to someone who also feels the same way. You know, now I'm here. It's like, oh my God, we're here. I mean, that's really, whoa. So we're not getting anywhere anymore. We've arrived at somewhere. And now it's just about restoring our registers so we can live paradise.
I just love that. We are home. We're home. Every step at this point, we've arrived home, and now we've walked into the house of this energetic, this multi-level place with all these different forms of light just bursting out from every atom. And now it's finding a way to connect to that light, which is in us. It's bursting from us too. And it's the realignment of these two things, and then the full experience of it. The capacities come back on.
Beautifully said.
Tell us a little bit about how it feels, because I know that you're connected. How can someone notice how that feels? What are some of the things that someone experiences as they connect to that light that's bursting forth?
I'm going to use it from a right now point of view, and everybody needs to know it's my point of view. There are millions of points of view, but my work is based on getting access to something, not figuring out what's right or wrong. And we've had some very amazing access points lately. So humanity is a collective one soul species. So when the soul consciousness of humanity starts to quicken again, we start to gather. We gather. We feel more who we are together than we do apart, which is fascinating given the New Age movement and the transformational movement and the new spirituality movement. We were really more isolated as individuals because we couldn't find ourselves here with others. You know, the otherness of us was missing. But now, just watch. I mean, there's like this amazing configuration of activity going on. So for instance, I saw the DACA girls and boys on the steps of the Supreme Court, and they were chanting, "Home is here. Home is here." And don't tell me creation's not listening. Home is here. And we as human beings have been conned into thinking we're the ones responsible for creation. We're the ones causing creation. And we don't realize, I mean, one of the kind of myths that might be of value to think of as a myth is the conversation about free will in many of the major religions, that humanity goes along, but if it gets too far off center, because it's part of this great organizing, unifying, balance, symmetry, proportion, beauty, whole, that something starts to self-correct. And we start to self-correct back into the next greater whole. And so in the meantime, we have stories. And some people are more attracted to stories that hurt. And some people are more attracted to stories that heal and make us happy. It's sort of simple. But at some point, a collective starts, a collective phenomenon starts. And while you're in the duality of either or things can be good or things can be bad, the original temple of this place was non-duality. It was an expression of love. It was an expression of beauty. It was an expression of harmony, like an expression of everything had a place. And so, in a very interesting way, when things are too polarized, when they become polarized to a certain level, everything breaks apart and reforms. So it's fascinating to me. And then the other one that I pay attention to collective consciousness, because I know that the collective consciousness is when we're resonating without being able to explain why we're doing what we're doing. Like this, we've had a COVID virus, and yet people are coming to the streets. Somehow they can't not do what they feel compelled to do. And the other thing was, I listened to time. So one of the things that happened was that 25,000 people in Texas went to their knees for 8 minutes and 46 seconds on behalf of life. That is an imprinting of the field of creation within which all reality rises. So while at one point humanity still thinks they're the only thing that created this place, which is frankly a very interesting, humorous joke, at the very same time, without us realizing it, we're actually listening. And we know we're beyond what a single individual can do, or even a collective. And we are kind of in a ping pong. We are sort of in our mental mind, we are sort of in a ping pong match between being hit by the polarities, this or that, right or wrong. But something else is emerging out of that has nothing to do with either. It's a collective wholeness. Did I answer your question?
Oh, yes.
Okay, good. I have a tendency to float off into.
No, it's cool. I gotcha. So this magical, and I've seen you write about it before. It's the whispers of creation, really. And what you're showing me very psychically is lovely, because usually from an anthropological point of view, I'm always thinking from the human vantage point. But this is from the creation vantage point, and including the entropy of human consciousness and the creativity of human consciousness with great equanimity, with great appreciation for both capacities. Because, well, if you look at the rest of the universe, that's exactly how it functions. Things are blowing up all the time and getting crumbled into things beyond atoms, and then rebuilt into magnificent galaxies and intelligence and consciousness. And the feeling I get is really interesting, because I'm getting better at feeling things, not just seeing them. But the feeling is this sense of everything's conscious. Everything is conscious. All the little molecules of oxygen I'm breathing have consciousness. And I feel that reconnect as you're just describing this, reconnecting to the consciousness beyond the personal self, and that perhaps deep beyond our trauma memory is the memory of how to move and be in this moving, living consciousness of the universe. And that what you're saying is, pay attention to the different events, how they percolate down through, and I don't even like to say down, but they percolate into the 3D. They percolate into collective action. Pay close attention, because all the humans are showing you how destruction and creation naturally work, and they're not needing to do it with the mind. They never have. They're doing it out of the nature of consciousness that they're in, and that nature of that consciousness, that there's the source field, and you can feel it when you are listening to what you're saying about it. How else are you noticing this creation, this consciousness percolating into the different layers and realms that humans are trying to navigate at the moment? What else would you like to say about that?
I was just noticing as you were talking that one of the things I've been observing pretty much since April, and I think one of the things is things are actually moving really, really fast. And for those of us that have businesses in this arena, there's almost like we're having to reconstruct on a dime to meet the awakening consciousness of humanity, which is fascinating to me. You know, I just finished a 6-year collective program, and now I have a 7-month collective program, simply because the awakening consciousness of humanity is, it's like a child that just needs to make sure that the environment's prepared so they don't run into anything while they're learning to walk, and that they don't get snagged by temper tantrums or misperceptions. And it's not like truth as we once knew it is the truth we'll know in the immediate future, because something's happening that goes beyond what I call our bandwidth right now. But we can notice our, as you said, our heart. We can notice that, first of all, empathy is scaling. To feel the pain and joy of another is scaling. I remember I was listening to something on the radio, and in the space between lights, between the lights, what do you call those things? Stoplights. In the space between the stoplights, I had managed to laugh hysterically, sob outrageously, and be furious. And I realized that our empathic scale is sort of, it's like an accordion. It's breaking loose from attaching reason to feeling. And one of the things I did not used to say in the past is I've been saying, let it rip, let it rip. You know, just don't put it in, you know, don't react. Just let your system open up, let it scale. Whether it's, you know, on the biofeedback machine, agony and ecstasy register just the same. It's just the mental perception we've attached to it. So one of the biggest things is the empathy roaring through the collective consciousness at such a level that people are worried about their emotions, but they don't realize they've been dumbed down. Our emotional plane has been dumbed down. When I was in Egypt, I'll never forget it. I was at the Mina Obi Hotel, and they were having a funeral in the morning and a wedding in the afternoon. So we pretty much stayed at the hotel all day. And in the morning, you heard the women racing across the desert with the, you know, the screaming like banshees. And it was to celebrate the wedding. But at 7 p.m. that night, I mean the funeral, but at 7 p.m. that night for the wedding, it was the same exact sound as they came roaring across the desert. And both of them made my skin crawl. And both times, tears came to my eyes and I shook inside because it was so primordial. It was so alive with sound. And yet it was about life. It was about the celebration of life, whether it was death or weddings. So there's something in the same thing happening inside of us right now. Our primordial self that kind of celebrates life is, and I really mean, it's the mental perception that gets in the way. It's really the mental perception, and we're building a muscle for caring again. We're not dumbed down anymore. Our systems are waking up, and so many people have been dormant and so many people have been suppressed that it's going to be a little active for a while. But it's just like when water breaks through a dam, eventually it becomes a stream again. It just does. And we can either jerk ourselves around about what's right, wrong, or we can know that everything's operating on behalf of the next greater whole. And it'd be worth it to even consider that, because then you can start to track. Your mind will trigger into tracking in a way that it wouldn't track if it just thinks we're going to hell in a handbasket.
Oh, I'm glad you brought up tracking, because that's such a powerful mystical tool to notice the subtleties and allow them. And I think bringing up the dam too, you know, I think that's what blocks people from regaining their capacity, right? It's resistance. And resistance is often cultivated from trauma And then trauma that's not even often yours, it's your lineages. You enter into an embodiment that remembers all of that. And then you resist. We resist the agony part. But knowing that it's part of the spectrum of frequency, then you end up having that universal compassion come on. That is a deep, true capacity for humans to say, you know what, pain, I've learned so much from you. Agony, you are so amazing. I have learned so much. Look at what we've learned. Look at what we have built from our pain and all the arrogance and worthlessness we built on it. And now it's crumbling and it hurts when it crumbles. But wow, I can truly have this sense, this feeling. The empaths really do have such a great, powerful tool in their feeling of this, the feeling of the crumbling, and then it belongs to the whole masterpiece. It belongs to the entirety of the masterpiece. I love that feeling of watching something crumbling and being amazed by it, and 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 being humbled by what seems like something so far beyond our own personal creation, and then surrendering to it. So would you say that that's what it's going to take to end the resistance to the crumbling, to get back to becoming a stream? Is it going to be the welcoming and the surrender? What else?
That's a great question. First of all, I had this incredible visceral experience when you were sharing about that we're crumbling back into our heart. It was the experience I had listening to you, that we're just crumbling back into our heart. That's all that's happening. And that we're our survival. If you really listen to everything going on, there's a bulk of humanity that doesn't want to lose their heart again, doesn't want that dulled down again, doesn't want to live in the way we've been living again. I want to answer with great seriousness your question about what do we do. I think we're done. I'm going to be really clear about that. I have done readings. I'm 74. I've done readings since I was 19. That's a long, long time. I have seen the emergence of human consciousness. I, like many others, probably you included, have been definitely putting my whole life into making sure that we get to a point where when we start to awaken, we can recognize it, that we can recognize it. For 45 of those years, if you go to my Facebook page, A Sacred Space for Resting Courage, it's more described there. But I've had visitations from higher beings along the way, and they all spoke about this time. Like one of the phrases in this being channeled this message through me that I couldn't even read for 2 years. It was so painful. If you ever want to feel really stupid, have a greater intelligence trying to dictate information through your brain, and every now and then simply reporting in that there's not a sufficient amount of gray matter available for it to transmit. It's a humbling moment. But one of the things that this being said was that time would fall at a heap at our feet. Another thing the being said was that love's frequency that is threaded through all the annals of human time would start to sing a new song. And that the pain, like somebody done somebody wrong song, the pain of love would simply be a sweet memory. And like we have songs that we see, a sweet memory, no longer held in the human heart. And that we would be a new love song. So that being painted our existence basically to trigger me to start to operate a certain way. But also now for people can read that, I call it the matrix of reality, read that document and it makes sense to them now. Wherein I got it in 1994, I couldn't even make sense of it. long time, because our frequency has shifted. We've changed our frequency. And so we're at an arrival point where it's kind of like our shoes nailed to the floor. And now we're in the depth of experiencing what there is to experience. So I'm not really sure what human beings should do right now. I think it's to relieve the pressure of their own emergence, which is like, this is why I came on your show. I don't normally come on it. It's really only because of you I'm on the show, because I don't need any work. And the last time I did a radio show, I couldn't fit people in. But the point is that we're now in an event today. We're not teaching today. Teaching may happen, but actually we're in an event. We're anchoring something more fully. Like if you have one raindrop, it does no good. But if you have a million, trillion raindrops, it makes a difference. And what we're really doing is we're in this coherent, cohesive, congruent moment where we're condensing ourselves with each other. We're compiling our registers of consciousness, and we're moving from being raindrops to floods. And that's what the collective consciousness has been after for a long time, that there are enough coherent, collective consciousnesses gathering together on behalf of life and what has us exist as whole in their consciousness, that it starts to be like sourdough bread. I don't know if you ever made sourdough bread, but if you put coloring in it, it colors the whole bread. So you could say that we're coloring the collective consciousness with our individual and collective cravings. But there's no to get to anymore. It's more, Elizabeth, it's really committing our time to being of something that is emerging in each of us and collectively. But each of us matters right now more than the collective, because it builds the capacity for a reality that I call paradise, that lives in the template of every human being.
Thank you for that, because it's so awkward, isn't it, to try to, after being told for so many eons, we're on a journey, we're getting somewhere, and then we're here and it's like, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do while we're here? No one knows. No one knows what to do because they have been journeying for
Right.
so long. It's like that weird feeling, when you're on a car ride for hours and hours and hours, and then you finally sit down like on a still couch, but you still feel like you're moving.
Right. Yeah, and it's the arrival of a moment. But this moment won't wash away. I'm a 60s baby. That moment washed away. But it left something behind in its wake. And it's very clear the young people are tapping out of that ghost that we left behind, the ghost in our creation. And only this time they're taking it further. They're clear. And I don't like all of us have an opinion about what people are doing. I'd love it to be another way. But last time I checked with the primordial mother, she's extremely messy and really doesn't color in the lines and hardly ever does what human beings really think she ought to do. So maybe we ought to give ourselves a little slack and be a little messy and trust that there's something, maybe trust if it's possible, but it'll win out. We've got 6 years. We've got 6 to 7 years. Some people say longer. I don't think so. Because everything I've seen in the past 45 years has come to be. All the markers, all the hints, all the omens, they've shown up. And so it's really hard for me to think it'd be any other way than the way I was shown, because everything is trajectorially, the two words I was thinking when you were talking, there's trajectory and there's tracking the trajectory. And if you're operating on the love of life, on behalf of all life, on behalf of what has us exist as whole, you'll have a certain trajectory. And you'll begin to be able to track that trajectory. And you know what? You'll still feel miserable when you're miserable, and you'll still be happy when you're happy. But that'll be your trajectory. It won't be any different than the people that think we're all going to dissolve into, negative energy, for lack of a better term. Not my gig, so I have a hard time even comprehending it, to even put it in words. But the point is that it's all arriving at the same destination. In this article, in this channel document, it said that some people in the beginning will feel crazy and feel lost and feel frightened. But because there's this surge of the collective that is able to keep emerging, keep awakening, that everyone, it will happen in total, in tutu, it will happen in total. And I believe that. I believe that. And I believe it brings the Buddhist faith. We arrive at heaven as all of us, not some of us. And I think that's a speaking towards non-duality, not duality. And so this phenomenon of unity is awakening in us. And we just have to remember, I'm meandering so I can get to a thing to do. I think the really thing to do is to be clear about what you're on the side of and leave the rest, be a register in the heart of creation. Register what you hold to be real, how you want to live here, and just register it. Just keep that in front of you and let the greater systems do their gig. Because we're in a greater system response right now. The Earth's going to do what she does. The cosmos is going to do what it does. But the part that in the Old Testament of the three major religions, it talks about humanity having dominion over the earth, but that's actually not the way it says it in Aramaic. In the original language is we are that which is created here as a dominion on our behalf. Because if the birds don't have us to see them, they couldn't exist. You know, if the trees weren't here for us to see, they wouldn't exist. So that's what it means about we're the dominion of sight, we're the dominion of language, we're the dominion of listening, we're that which allows paradise to register. In other words, we're extremely important, or none of this would even be so. And then I want to add something, because this is part of getting ready or being what I do before I get ready to be in a conversation. Is I've always been irritated by positive thinking. Sorry. And I'm all for it, but I'm not for thinking that negative thinking creates reality. I'm not for that. Because I've dealt in higher frequency consciousness. I've notable transformational events of enlightenment. And every time we're in one of those notable events of enlightenment, there's no negative nothing. And we're literally registers of paradise. We literally are in paradise in those enlightened moments. We are in that realm. And then I had the privilege of knowing David Hawkins for a short period of time. And one of the things that I realized is that, the higher frequencies don't even register us until we get up around 350 or above. You can even watch it on the brainwave scale. When the brainwaves start to operate at a higher frequency, literally other waves start to come in. It starts to multiply itself. It looks like a community, basically, your brainwaves. So the part that I realize has always concerned me is that we need our higher thinking. We need our emotional registers that love and care and cry and yell and stomp and, like the Maori stomping on the mother to make sure she's listening. We need them because they register in creation. But if you look, using a metaphor, although it's visually what I see, up until now, there have been long segments of time where there's just empty space where humanity's not present, until we suddenly become this beam of light because we're in these higher registers of consciousness and we're starting to link back in, we're starting to web back in to the systems of creation that operate in higher playing fields called paradise. Yes.
Oh, good.
I just want to say that.
This is good. It's great. I love it. I love registering. I love that you're saying, see the birds, see nature, notice it. You were just describing before we began recording that you're so blessed and you're surrounded in living nature. The flowers are reaching out to touch your home and you. The ground rises to meet you. It's the
Yes.
ancient term the Irish always talked about. The ground, may the road rise to meet you.
Yes.
And it does. It reaches out. It wants humanity here. And I noticed that. I noticed the people who've been bogged down in the dualistic thinking that humankind is a virus not to be wiped off the earth. And that is not what the experiment and the creation process that's so far beyond us wanted. That's not the, we need to figure that out for ourselves. Really, it just points out, do you want to be here? Do you feel like you're wanted here by this planet and by nature? If you don't, go out and notice it. Go see the bugs. I'm in Kentucky out in the middle of the boonies, and we have some really weird bugs here. And I just love it because they'll land on me and I'll just admire how amazing they are and how interesting they are. And that's the tracking. It's the tracking of creation. It's the wonder. It's the essence of wonder that human consciousness can give, and that it brings momentum to the light that wants to pour through every atom that's showing up at the moment. There's that momentum in where we're at the moment. So we are home. We are home. We have been. We're learning how to re-register. We're learning how to ground into it again. And I love that you're not disallowing the whole spectrum of emotion, because I think that the emotional body is one of our greatest tools. And when we notice a frequency of emotion and we don't resist it and we go into a fit of rage and we have our little crying time and then we move through it, we become what? We could become more knowledgeable. We become smarter. We become smarter because we let ourselves feel something that actually exists in this reality instead of continuing to deny it and say, oh, I'm only going to look at light, only light, only light. But that's missing half the masterpiece. The other half is the density. And that's a part of the masterpiece too. And when you can take that seer's vantage point from an incredibly huge level of reality and perceive its truth as the whole masterpiece, then you see, ah, yes, this is home. And it included all of it. It included all of it. It all exists. That's what universal compassion is. To say, oh, yes, this rage, you are special. You are welcome here. You're part of the beautiful palette that creation has used. And I too am painted into this beautiful painting. I too am part of the stream that's bursting forth from the dam. And it's okay for me to feel the bursting. It's not going to destroy me, because really nothing is truly ever destroyed in this consciousness, in this creation. So it's interesting because it's hard to ask you questions.
Let me respond to something you said earlier, because you brought it up again. And that is that you brought up that we live in an animate reality, that we are animated. And it's important to remember we're animated, because one of the destructive things that has happened to humanity, whatever caused it, I don't pay attention to train wrecks. I just pay attention to getting us back up again afterwards. But whatever that did, the one thing it took away from us is our animation. And we became ping pong balls of thought. We got stuck between our ears. And then we began to classify everything as a description, or tried to classify how to understand things that cannot be understood. So the whole world, 98% of our existence is not to be understood. And we got stuck in the 2% of understanding that isn't even accurate after every 500 years. So this whole willingness to be animate, I want to tell a short humorous story. I think it's humorous. I used to live in Ohio. My second sanctuary was in Ohio. and we had 1,000 feet of riverfront. And when I'd feel, when I got mad at God, I would go out in the backyard far enough for nobody to hear me, usually right down to the river, which is probably a good football field away. And then I just started screaming bloody murder at God, metaphorically speaking. And I'd always start with, up with this, I will no longer put. Then I would list the things that I would no longer put up with, because if you deal in any primordial energy, something starts listening when you're yelling at the top of your lungs. Something starts listening when you're laughing hysterically. Something starts listening when you're crying your guts out. Something starts listening when you're rolling around the ground so in love you could have an orgasm. I mean, something starts listening. Well, every time I did that, all of a sudden, everybody that lived in the house started cleaning house. It happened every time because the energy started roaring through everything, and everybody started to get busy about whatever needed to be cleaned up around them. So the point I'm making is that we're missing a whole energetic part of us because we try to move each other around like a chessboard rather than just opening up into the power of creation and letting creation absorb it. And we call it informing the field. And then the field informs us. It comes back and does a printout. In our case, we got the house clean. It prints out in some manner. And I feel called to say something. So here we go. I want to demonstrate the power of a human being in unity with creation. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to use myself, which I wish I had another analogy, but I don't. So where I live in a 21-foot RV. I'm in heaven. I've got the best lot on the property. But I lived here 6 years ago, or up till 6 years ago, before I moved up a little further up the hill. And when I was up the hill, when we still lived here, a fire started in Auburn, a bad one. It started right outside where we have 100, where we have 99 RVs with propane tanks. So my partner called me and said, do something. We've got a fire rushing right at us. So I walked out of the patio, their patio, and I shifted into my direct link with creation. And there's no way, as you know, to talk about that. But basically, I made a request. And I let the fire, the water, the earth, the air look through my eyes. I let it feel me as a human being, not wanting the RV park to burn because it would have taken out Auburn. We're like loaded with propane tanks here. And I just let it feel me. I let it feel my crying. I let it feel my fear. I just let the primordial forces register me. And then we kind of entered into an imaginary dialogue. All this is lost to humanity for the most part. And in the imaginary dialogue, it was as if it didn't happen like this, but it's as if it said, well, what do we do? And so I imagined that I drew a line, a circle around the RV park. And I said, would you mind if the fire only burned to here? Would you mind? And then once that was done, I jumped in my car and found my way through here because they had stopped us from coming into Auburn, but I found my way through. And my partner, Glenn, said to me, I want to show you something because the fire had not burned here. And it's still here even today. There is a line around the RV park. And all of a sudden, the fire only burned till there. So it isn't just a matter, the first level is just to feel better about being alive, honest to God. Because we're going through a 6-year chaos. We're going to have sudden drops, sudden deconstructs, sudden collapses. But then it's only because there are new constructs out of that. There's expansion out of that. Yes, there's going to be a lot going out of existence, but there's going to be a lot coming into existence. But because it's happening so fast, it's hard on us. It's hard on the human system that's been in this 5,000 years doldrums, so to speak. It's like being in a constant storm right now. So first of all is to let our emotional plane open up. But then we start to return to our direct link with creation. It's hard to believe, but the greater systems do not pay attention to every human being. It takes a collective. It's like, do we pay attention to the ants? I mean, it just doesn't happen that way. But we also are meant to partner. You know, I cannot tell you, I could do a laundry list of people, like in Australia, we did a body of work so the fire bypassed a certain nursing home because they couldn't get the people out. But the problem with the conversation is it sounds like we're causing it. No, we're just part of the whole. We're just making a suggestion. We're just operating on behalf of life, just like the primordial mother operates on behalf of life and the cosmos operates on behalf of life. So the reason I'm bringing this in here is so people will never hear me again. And we've got 6 years. And we are in a collective moment where we're being heard. We're that 8 minutes and 46 seconds with 25,000 people on their knees registered. And then we inform the field of creation. And then the field of creation begins to bring in how that manifests in ways we could never figure out ourselves. And I've been this way for so long. I don't teach it. I'm not interested in teaching it. What I am interested in is in being it. And I am interested in people being interested in being it because their collective consciousness, their consciousness will inform them. The one thing we have in common with the whole animate world, all animate, all the world that's animate, is our consciousness. And it's very active right now.
I love that. And it does point to what is mysticism really. It's not about teaching, it's about being it. And we are home. We can be home. We can be registered. We can register. It is no longer about journeying. We are here. Now we get to be here.
And trust our imaginative process. I swear, just go imagine. Because people don't yet realize there's a quickening going on. Just be rudimentary. You know, on the Facebook Live I did this morning, I said, just do 3 times, celebrate the solstice 3 times, because it's going to take at least 3 times for you to register with the greater whole of which we're a part. And I'll be glad to do the rest. You know, I'll be glad to do the part I can do because I have these capacities. But every time that a collective human being, you know, that's the ancient Druids, that's the ancient Wiccans, is that they just fed the power to who already had a link in, and then everything went the way it was intended to go. And then it became priests and teachers and presidents and governors, and it was never that. It was always just see who is paying attention, who has gathered the force of what connects us to life and has us exist as whole, and connect with them and feed them, and they'll feed you. And that's the way of the mother. That's the way of the primordial nature.
Mm-hmm.
It is both and.
Yeah, and it's the grace of attention.
Yes.
Attention. And I love the miracle you described because you said letting the fire see through your eyes. The fire wasn't better than you or even more powerful, even though it certainly probably felt like that in the moment. And you weren't better or more powerful than the fire. It was an equanimity and the complete stepping out of the way so that the consciousness of the fire knew the truth of reality. And that to me is just so fabulous. It's mystical, it's magical, it's truth, it's miraculous in that if you're just paying attention to the little bugs in the garden or the ants.
I always use that analogy because one ant won't get your attention, but a million will.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I feel. One of us may not get the attention of the greater powers of creation, but a million of us, we will.
Exactly.
We will.
25,000.
Exactly.
We will. And here's this fabulous little question that comes up because I'm hearing you describe what I like to call the real internet. And I'm always encouraging people, try your hand at dreaming. Try your hand at mystical dreaming. Imagine what you want and what you can be in, imagine what you can be in. Imagine where you're at right now. No longer needing to imagine the journey anymore. We need to imagine where we're at. We need to dream it. And then we need to feel it. We want to feel how that feels. We want to act on it through the animation of our consciousness. And we also want to surrender it, because, of course, creation is going to be far more clever about making all of that happen than we are. But that's the true internet. And I want to give a quick little example. My my sister, she called me, and she's been having some trouble with an ex of hers, and she called me and said, I had a dream last night that, this is all going to end up panning out for me, that it's all going to end up in grace and gentleness. And she said, but I'm really frustrated because he went and talked to a couple of my friends, and I stopped her and I said, well, I had a dream about that part last night. I dreamt that you don't need to worry about that. Just trust your friends. And she's like, whoa. And I said, that's why I called you. I wanted to tell you about the dream, but I had no idea that he was talking to your friends or whatever. But the source field knows, the field of creation knows already. And this is new for her.
Yeah.
It's just showing what the capacities are that are coming online into the real internet. And yet still, are we going to toss the material internet out with the bathwater? No, we're not. We're going to end up probably recreating this whole thing in 500 years. Like you said, it all resets and it never stays relevant for long.
No.
But the creation always does. And
I want to build on what you said, because I if nothing else that I want to make a point about on this call is that for a lot of us, it took a long time to get to where we're at. It's not taking so long, but if you imagine condensing the awakening that happened in, let's say for me, 50 years, if you imagine condensing that into 6 years, it's intense. So what you just said for me is really important. I have watched awakening my whole life. It's my gig. And someone asked me what my fun was once, and I said to watch you when you wake up. That's my fun. But truthfully, if you start with the creative imagination, because when people get into the creative imagination, they start saying, was that real? Well, ignore that. Just be in it. Because when it's real, you cannot deny it. You can't get out of it. But the creative imagination is the door in. And then you start to have meandering imaginings, and then you start to have dreaming. And the way your neural wiring is located in your fires in your brain, it short circuits when it can't go past a certain neural webbing. But you want the short circuit, because I don't understand the dream, great. I don't understand the imagining, great, because you're making the neural wiring fire and track more. You want this thing up here to track. And then something happens one day in my book, An Irish Tale of a Modern Mystic. For me, it was looking up at 40-foot trees, and they didn't look like 40-foot trees. They looked like beings looking down at me. And I remember it well, because in my head, I started to say, oh, they're just trees. And this other part of me screamed, no, because for me, they were really real, but not yet. And the electrical circuitry of the explosion of my own consciousness literally knocked me about 6 feet. I had a physiological impact of just the power in my brain to explode past its own parameters. And I remember laying on the ground, looking up at 40-foot high effervescent beings, looking down at me. And it was an imagination like that anymore. Like if you look at my Facebook Live page today, there's a second part that I did, because when I go to the pond, 50 geese surround me. It's impossible to explain to people why this happens. But today, right after I'd finished the Facebook Live, I walk out and, oh my God, there they are. And so I'm quickly getting my, ready. And so people got a video of a rare moment where, like one goose sat down in front of me, like, excuse me, I'm going to rest here while you all contemplate yourself. And because that's what happens, reality begins to become attracted to you, and the animated world begins to be back in love again with you, and you begin to be back in love again with it. And you have things that go beyond the neural fabric of your present wiring, but then you get to see more, then you hear more, then you think better. And it's why I established the creation exercises, 20 years ago, simply but so the neural wiring had a chance to broaden its bandwidth. Talk about internet, it's internal internet. So we're in a lot of stuff right now, and people need to keep listening to what stirs their hearts, stirs their imagination, stirs their cravings, stirs their dreaming, because it's not happening in the physical world yet. It's happening in the etheric territory. We're spirit becoming flesh at the next level. We're energy becoming matter at the next level. We're formlessness becoming form at the next level. We're the non-physical becoming physical at the next level. So our imagination is imperative.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
Well, you and I, for us, it's our liqueur. It's our liqueur.
Truly, truly. And I always remind people, as you begin to regain your capacity for imagination, regain your capacity to dream, 99% or more of what you're going to perceive, you'll never truly understand.
True.
And it makes the wonder of reality even bigger and better. It helps us to surrender to home.
Yeah.
And then it helps paradise connect through us, to us, through us, with everyone and everything around us. Even the weird material things that humans have created, all of that ends up becoming animated too.
Absolutely.
I talk to my computer.
We're very good at multiple plays.
Exactly.
A lot of plays out there.
Yes. Oh, it's so beautiful. So you really have gently, very gently, through your miracles that you've experienced, through your field, through your heart, reconnected us to where we're at, to our home, to this paradise. And what is there any additional thought or transmission you'd like to share now that we're here at this end of our conversation, which
Just the thing that spurred out of what you said is just a promise. It's better to be alive than think about being alive.
That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
It's very simple too. Very simple. And that naturally and automatically gets us right out of the ping pong mind. I like that.
Very good. Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Tantra. It's been wonderful to be with you, to be seen and to see for it. We can be a extra set of eyes together to help people see this, that they are here. And now it's just time to pay attention, register, notice, dream, imagine, and the rest of creation functions as it will.
Absolutely. And it's great being in your playground.
Oh, thank you.
Absolutely.
So where can people come and sign up to learn more about your work?
My website is my name, tantramaat.com. It makes it fairly simple. I have a limited venue. I have consults always, but I have a limited venue because I'm doing a 7-month closed body of work. And I recommend my Friday Facebook Lives.
Oh, good.
That's fun for me. That's really my precious Jackie, who used to be my admin, who's now married in UK. She said to me, "You got to do this," because I never do anything like that. And she always tricks me into things, and they always turn out something I really love. So I want to thank my beautiful web person for that. So yeah, mostly I was here for the event and for the message. People have a way of finding. I've never advertised. You know, I really am in truth the old crone in the cave, you know, or the naked woman in the water staring at the sky. And it always has amazed me that humanity's found its way to me. It's always really amazed me. It's always been a surprise and a pleasure, and a pleasure.
Truly, and we're blessed to have you. We're blessed to have you because you activate the creation in us by just your presence. But the stories are also wonderful too.
That's the design of every human being.
Amen to that.
Amen.
Absolutely. Namaste, my friend Tantra. Thank you so much
Namaste.
for joining us.
Same, same.